Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and you're listening to The Business of Content, a podcast about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. Today, we're talking about how publishers are monetizing their newsletters with paid subscriptions. There's no question that newsletters are on the rise. Legacy publishers are constantly launching new newsletter products. Quartz's Obsession newsletter, for instance, picks seemingly random topics and goes deep on them. Vox's Voxcare newsletter, a favorite of mine, covers new developments in healthcare policy. But we're also seeing a number of media startups that are producing newsletters without corresponding websites. The Hustle, a business news-oriented newsletter that has over 500,000 subscribers, keeps all its content contained within its newsletter and publishes none of it to its website. The same can be said for The Skim, a female-focused newsletter launched by two former NBC producers, and Lena Dunham's Lenny Letter. So what's the business model for these types of newsletters? Of course, many of them rely on advertising, but we're also seeing a number of new products enter the market that allow newsletters publishers to charge money to their subscribers, often in exchange for access to extra premium newsletters. For example, HotPod, a newsletter about the podcast industry, sends out a weekly free newsletter each Tuesday and a second one every Friday for subscribers who pay $7 a month. Given the rise of paid newsletters, we've seen a number of new platforms spring up to service this type of publisher. One of those platforms is Review, a newsletter distribution platform that was designed with content publishers in mind. I interviewed its founder, Martin de Kepper, about the platform's offerings and the best way for publishers to convert casual newsletter readers into paying subscribers. Let's jump right into it. Hey, Martin, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So to start with, in the intro, I'm pretty sure I mispronounced your name just because as an American, I can't make those exact same sounds. Can you pronounce it for everyone so they know how your name is actually pronounced?
Yeah, sure. In Dutch, it's pronounced Martijn de Kuiper.
Okay. So you co-founded a company called Review. Can you explain what Review is?
Yeah, of course. So Review is a tool that allows you to easily create editorial newsletters. So, when we started this and we told people we have a platform for creating newsletters, they always, compare us to existing email marketing platforms, but that is specifically what we're not doing. So where we differentiate is that we have a tool for editorial newsletters, where most of the other email platforms are mainly focusing on promotional newsletters.
So they're focused on marketing. You're for, working with publishers like newspapers, magazines, or independent content creators. Like you're more focused on like editorial content.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the reason why I thought what you're doing is relevant and why I brought you on is that there's just so much more focus on email newsletters today. Like you can't listen to a podcast these days without hearing an ad for MailChimp. Is it fair to say that newsletters are really making a comeback?
I think it's definitely fair to say. There's over the last few years, and especially in the last year, there's this huge renaissance of newsletters, and we're mainly talking about these editorial newsletters. Promotional newsletters have always been there, and they're growing as well. But what you see these days is mainly, like you said, publishers or indie publishers and writers using newsletters to inform people instead of selling products or promote their business.
And especially I've seen a rise in newsletters that are a lot of times newsletters are just used to link to web content. It'll be a list of links to recent articles or something like that. Mm-hmm. But we're seeing a lot of, I feel publisher after publisher launching newsletters where everything that you need to know is contained within the newsletter itself. Like the articles and content are within the newsletter. So that seems to be kind of and it seems like every single day we're seeing a publication launching some kind of niche specific newsletter.
Yeah, definitely. NPR wrote a great, I'm not sure it's an article, but they created a website where they talk about newsletters that go from skim to dive, right? The skim newsletters are on the one end, almost automated, RSS-driven newsletters that mainly include links. On the other end, you have these dive newsletters that you're talking about that are that have unique content that is written specifically for the newsletter and that allows you to read in your inbox. And everything in between. I personally believe that the in the middle is of course it depends on your audience and who you are. but I personally believe the most in what's in between. So where people, link to articles, but use them to tell a story, and if you want more information, you can click on the articles, etc. But I think that's the most ideal format.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think we're like making this shift back? Because like for years we were treated to headlines that email is dead, and that's and then all the focus was on social media as the new form of communication. Why do you think that there's this shift back to newsletters, shift back to email? Do you think it's obviously Facebook is in the news? It's been not just for the data. The data leaks, but also because of its changing its algorithm, so there's less focus on news and publishers. Do you think that like the rise in the resurgence of newsletters is kind of like have to do with the distrust that publishers have for Facebook, considering that email is one of the last kind of open source distribution methods that aren't controlled by an algorithm?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. There are a lot of advantages of newsletters, but I think the main reason is because these algorithm timelines have become saturated with clickbait and advertising and irrelevant information. And newsletters are a great way to reach an audience directly. Next to that, it's also very personal. It's very intimate. It's in an inbox. People actually read your content, and people are very loyal readers. So I think especially the issues that social media platforms have these days are driving this resurgence.
And I think part of that is like with Facebook and Twitter, you look at the analytics and it's like, it's way under 10% of the people who are seeing the content, much less clicking on it. Whereas if you look at like the analytics for a newsletter, probably 100% of people of your subscribers are actually at least seeing the subject line in their inbox. And then open rates can be high as, 30, 40, 50%, which is completely unseen, on social media. So it seems that like email, at least is getting much more engagement than you'll ever see on social media.
Yeah, way more. We even see an average open rate of 50% on our platform. And I think it's mainly because people subscribe to these newsletters because they actually want to receive the information, right? When you sign up for a service or you buy a product somewhere, you often get a newsletter, which might be interesting, but it's not something you specifically signed up for. And these newsletters, people actually want to get. So I think that is why we see these numbers. You don't see it on other platforms.
Yeah, so because the friction is slightly higher for you to actually sign up for the newsletter, you're more likely to. Whereas like Facebook on Twitter, it takes like 2 seconds to hit a like button or a follow button on Twitter, so you're probably not as engaged as you would be if you were to actually invite that publication into your inbox.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for years, the two major players that anybody heard of was like MailChimp and Constant Contact. Why are we suddenly seeing like a lot of new entrants like your company?
Because these platforms are not created with publishers in mind and journalists. Like I said, these are created for promotional newsletters. For example, if you look at MailChimp, which is a great tool, but if you go to their homepage right now, you almost won't see the word email on it. It's mainly focused on how to sell more products, right? So it's specifically focused on marketing and selling products. They have, they have web shop integrations, they have Facebook ad integrations, these kinds of things. And I don't think they're the right tools to create these editorial newsletters. That is also why we created Revue, to make it so much easier to, add content and to write within the platform itself, and to send them out. I think that is the main reason why.
Can you dive a little bit more into that? Like why is MailChimp not in Constant Contact? Why aren't they friendly to publishers versus something like what you guys do?
Well, mainly it's also because what I mentioned before, the feature set is different. So they focus on they have like algorithms that let you that automatically pick the right product to promote to your audience, for example, but also something simple like what we call like medium-like editor, so where you can just write, and have these formatting options and these kinds of things. And we also focus a lot of content that you can bring in content from different sources. So, for example, from RSS or Facebook or Twitter, you can connect all your social media and all the articles that you shared. You can easily drag and drop in your newsletter. I think that's the main difference, and that the other platforms don't have these kinds of features that we see that writers and journalists really want. So I think that's the main reason, if it makes sense.
So you've created like a really kind of slick CMS, like what you would find in like Tumblr or Medium, where it's really easy to just compose within the the platform itself, rather than writing something off platform and then having to copy and paste it over into it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you make that comparison, because we like to compare us to these platforms as well, instead of the email marketing services. We just happened, our output just happened to be email. I always like to say. So I think we're more in line with these platforms.
Mm-hmm. So how are like in terms of like how publishers are using these platforms, like how sophisticated are they? Because like you go to like an email marketing conference and they're doing things like A/B testing subject lines, where they'll send out several different of the same email but with different subject lines to a small percentage of their email list to really kind of test which subject line works best, and then once they have the results of that test, they then send it out to the entire email list using the winning subject line. We see them creating kind of, segmented lists. So if you happen to land on a particular piece of content, you get added to, when you sign up for the newsletter, you get added to a specific list so that every single email is theoretically more targeted. You see marketing automation so that like if they do a certain action, it triggers like an email, some kind of like email list or something like that, or like an automatic email. Like, do you see publishers engaging in this kind of like more kind of sophisticated email marketing, or are they just basically just sending out of the same, one email a week or whatever time period they're working on? That's just basically straightforward editorial.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think roughly it depends on the size of the publishers, obviously. How many resources do they have to do these kinds of things? So we've been focusing a lot on sort of like indie publishers and writers. They don't have a specifically a need for these kinds of tools that you're mentioning. But now we're focusing more and more on publishers as well. So more and more publishers are moving to our platform, and they're definitely want to use these kinds of tools. They're actively testing subject lines. They're segmenting. It's definitely something that is becoming more and more. How do you say that? Becoming more and more interested in these kinds of tools, and I think it has to do with the, with sort of like maturity of the editorial newsletters. Because although email's very old and newsletters are there for ages, these editorial newsletters are still pretty sort of new. So I think, over time, more and more people will start using these. But we also see a lot of people who just want to get content out there, easily, without having to code templates and these kinds of things.
So one thing you've done that's somewhat unique is you've added this membership layer where users can, like someone who uses your platform, they can create special newsletters for paying subscribers, and you kind of handle that all within the ecosystem. Did you see a need for this in the marketplace?
Yeah, definitely. It was mainly driven by our user base. So a lot of people asked for this. There are multiple ways to do this. So we've talked to a lot of people before launching it. So we've talked to people who coded their own solution. So they integrated Stripe and they used code to create this. What we heard from them is that they don't really want to do this because they want to focus on the content and they want to focus on creating the newsletter. So it's a lot of overhead, and it's a lot of work to maintain it. Another way is what we also saw is people using or like tying together the third-party services. So they use MailChimp, and then they take another service that takes care of the payments or like the memberships and these kinds of things. But the reader experience isn't optimal when you do that, because, for example, if you look at Patreon, there are people who use Patreon, and then when you want to sign up or when you want to become a member, you have to go to Patreon, you have to create an account there, and et cetera, et cetera. So the whole flow isn't ideal. So that's why we've created this paid newsletter functionality, the membership functionality. So everything is integrated. So you simply connect your Stripe account, set a monthly fee, and then you can just start sending to either everybody or just your paid members. So it's really easy. I think that is a core to what we're doing. We make everything extremely easy. So now everybody can do this.
I've always thought that like a newsletter would be the perfect way to deliver or to enact like a paid membership, because like if you create some kind of paywall, then the paying members have to like juggle log in, remember what their username and password is to like log in and get past the paywall. Whereas if it's like a paid newsletter, like let's say you have free content on your website, but you're trying to convert people into like your premium newsletter, then once they've signed up, then they don't need to do anything else. It's just delivered to their inbox every day. They don't have to constantly remember a login or anything like that. And it's only delivered exclusively to the paying subscribers. So you don't have to worry about, people who aren't paying getting access to the content, unless like obviously if someone could forward it to someone else, but that's not like a super efficient thing for them to do. So it just seems like if you wanted to create a membership platform, I think like email, like a subscription email newsletter would be the way to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also about the access thing, like people can forward it. But what we see is that, and I think it's because of this like personal characteristics again of newsletters. Like people also start becoming a member because they want to support the writer or they want to support the publisher, right? So they can forward it, or like they can find ways to get access, but they don't only pay for the access, they also pay to just support people. And that's what we see on our platform as well. So yeah, that works really great.
And what are some of the best strategies you're seeing for people who are able to convert like free the news, like subscribers to the free newsletter into paid subscribers?
Yeah, so how we created it right now is that you can either have a free newsletter or a free and a paid version. So people can always sign up for the free version, and then can decide to become a paying member. That's also a result of the people we talk to. Like most people wanted to do this model, and we believe this is the best way to get people to sign up. So get them subscribed, send out, I don't know, maybe a weekly newsletter with a curated newsletter, for example, with interesting links and some commentary. And then like the second or third newsletter in the week, you can dive into a topic, have a more long form kind of newsletter where people want to pay for. And obviously every free newsletter has a call to action to become a paying member. I think that's the best model for people to have their subscribers become a paying member.
So like a freemium model. So like trying to get people hooked on the free newsletter, try to kind of win their support and their brand loyalty. And then, just converting like obviously the free newsletter subscriber, that list will always be larger, but trying to convert over time some subset of that list into actual paying subscribers, so that they then get like maybe you send out 2 newsletters a week. The one that might be sent on Tuesday is the free newsletter, and then if you subscribe, you also get one on Thursday. That's like the paid exclusive newsletter.
Exactly. But we also see newsletters that are strictly paid, but they're very niche. They're about a very specific topic. And people who sign up already kind of know what they can expect. And we also see the other way around, where people have paid members, but they only send their newsletter to everybody because it's mainly for support. So people want to make sure that the author can continue sending the newsletter, because it still takes a lot of time to produce them, as you know, because you also have a newsletter, right? Mm-hmm. So we see all kinds of models. But I think the freemium model works best right now.
Yeah, it's got to be hard probably to convert people into just a purely paid newsletter with no free newsletter to go along with it, because people like having a taste. They like, I mean, it's hard to create that kind of brand loyalty to then lead to them, opening up their wallets without them getting to taste like the free stuff first.
Yeah, definitely. And this is the first version we released. Another interesting model might be, to have a number of issues for free, or maybe like 1 or 2 months for free, and then they have to start paying. But it's something we'll maybe add later, these kind of options. I'm really curious to see how they will work out.
Yeah. So what about like newsletter advertising? Like, do you feel like there is a demand for this kind of advertising? And like, how easy is it for a popular newsletter to find interested advertisers? Like, it seems kind of a wild west right now.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. We really want to help people create these newsletters and reach an audience, and obviously make money off of it. So it does make sense for us to start looking into this as well. But like you said, it's kind of a wild west right now. And I think if we go back to the personal nature of the newsletters, I don't think ads, like simple plain ads, work really well. I haven't seen it working very well. I've talked to a bunch of people that do it, and the results are not really good. I think the sponsorship model lends itself better for newsletters. I think that's a better fit with the characteristics of newsletters. So we're really curious to see how that model will work out. And there are a lot of services that help you find these advertisers specifically for newsletters. There are a few that are doing really well. So yeah, it's really interesting, but we're not there yet, to be honest.
Uh-huh. But you do think that there's like demand for it. I can't get a read on whether brands and companies, like when they're, allocating their marketing and advertising budgets, whether they're even really thinking about newsletters as like a place where they can spend their money. It seems like they're thinking either like print, video, or social media ads, or search ads. I'm wondering how many are actually really like thinking about newsletters as a good, although it seems like they would probably have strong ROI if they're done well, since newsletters have a lot more loyalty than, a lot of other mediums.
Yeah, that's why I think sponsorship can work really well. And you see publishers doing it, but still they're doing just, plain ads. And I don't really know, to be honest, if they work really well.
Uh-huh. And like, do you think like the newsletter space is starting to get crowded? Like it seems like now that people have been turned on to the resurgence of it, it seems like publishers left and right are launching new newsletters. I've kind of noticed, I don't know if this is a coincidence, or maybe it's just because as my newsletter grow, the open rates go down. But I feel like it's been a little bit harder lately to get my open rates to what they once were. Like, do you think that like that like inboxes are getting a little bit crowded now with all these newsletters?
Yeah, it might be. I think the reason that after a while, when your list grows and when your open rate goes down, I'm not sure if that is the specific reason for it. I hear more people start to talk about this. That's why I also think that newsletters are great for more niche topics. I mean, there are a lot of people out there, right? And so in the beginning, when we started Revue, people asked me like, okay, it's really cool what you're doing, but after a certain time, everybody gets like 4, 5, 6 emails, or maybe even more from you, like from our specific platform. What are you going to do about it? And then my answer was always like, if we get to that point, I think we're doing really, really well. Because there are a lot of people out there, and they're all interested in different topics. So again, that's why I think it's really that newsletter lends itself better for niche topics. So all publishers now, left and right, are sending newsletters, and I can imagine that people are getting tired of those more generic, like general news newsletters. But I think it will evolve into publishers focusing more on topics and niches, so that people can decide which ones they want to receive. I think that's something that's going to happen in the future. But I don't think there's a newsletter fatigue yet right now. I think that's way too early still.
And one of the appeals of newsletter marketing obviously is that it is more kind of like open source. There's not one platform that rules it all. They're not algorithmically based. But we've been seeing some moves lately, specifically from Gmail, which is now one of the biggest players in email, where they are kind of tinkering with the inbox. A lot of email marketers were upset when they rolled out their like various tabs, including the promotions tabs, which were kind of relegating newsletters into kind of like a no man's land that was driving down open rates. And then like Google's continuing to, they would argue, innovate in terms of prioritizing different kinds of email and stuff for you. Like, do you think that like, people in email marketing should be nervous that that some of these email platforms, in terms of how they filter content, the email content and stuff like that, that is kind of like a threat to the medium?
Oof, that's a very good question. We do see a lot of people being, they don't know where the newsletters end up. They often say like, hey, it's in my spam, and then you ask more questions, and then it's in promotion. So it's definitely confusing. I'm not sure if, not right now, it's mainly Google, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if they will go into the, more into the algorithmic, applying more algorithms to give certain newsletters a more prominent place in the inbox. I think they're trying to help people, manage their email more. So it's more from I think there's a different incentive there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I don't think, I'm not worried yet. I wish we had more control over where the newsletters end up, obviously, because it can be confusing. But I'm not worried about it right now.
Yeah, I've seen some newsletter writers, like they actually like instruct their users, if they have Gmail, how to pull it out of the promotions tab and put it into the main tab. So that's probably not the most efficient way of changing things, but it is one way that they seem to be getting around it.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh-huh. So, Martin, those were all the questions I had. Thanks so much for joining me. Where's the best place that people can find you?
Me personally, the best place is Twitter. It's twitter.com/MDEKUIJPER, and obviously getreview.co. That's GETREVUE.co. Getreview.co.
Okay. Okay, great. Well,
thanks so much.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, that's all I have for you today. Be sure to subscribe to the Business of Content on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. See you next week.